let's talk about the importance of accountability, helping others. And I know you have your own gym, you have an app, you have online memberships and things like that. How important, and I know you're going to say extremely important, but I want you to kind of tell our audience how important community is when you're going for goals, and also how important it is to have a coach.
Oh, so I actually posted this quote a while back, and it really fascinated me, the response I got to it. But it was basically about how you can't lone wolf it. And I thought it was so interesting because when I posted that quote, I expected people to be like, yeah, I need support, I need accountability. And people are like, no, I go it alone. I can do it all alone. And it got me really to think about it, because I even the most independent person, and I consider myself an extremely independent person, needs those people that support them, that pick them up when they're down.
Yeah.
And I think if we don't have that, we might have succeeded on our own, but the success would have taken longer. Mm-hmm. We didn't get quite as far as we actually could have if we had support, or we're just not recognizing some of the places we actually did get support. So I found it very interesting that a lot of people thought they were lone wolfing it. And what I would tell them, and what I did tell them, is if you can get accountability, you'll be surprised by how much further you can go, how much quicker you can get there. Because the thing is you need someplace to go on those bad days to have someone say, hey, look at all that you've accomplished, because we can't fully do that for ourselves. As much as we want to, be self-driven, we want to give ourselves credit, we want to believe in ourselves, sometimes we need that little pick-me-up. And having someone else just say, hey, you did a really good job. Or, hey, you might know that you've lost 7 pounds already, but look, you lost 7 pounds. You might have lost any weight this week, but you've done all of this already. And that's just going to keep building. We need that little bit of reassurance. We need that little bit of a guide. And it's actually why I created the Redefining Strength Academy. So I have a free group on Facebook. It's free. There's no strings attached. I interact in there. I have a lot of other coaches that have their own businesses interact in there. And it's just a place you can come for advice.
Cool.
Someone posted in there and they're like, I heard that you can't lose weight as a woman over 40. And I was like, how do these rumors get started?
Yeah.
But she needed reassurance that this person was just, being negative, or who knows what. She just needed reassurance, and she got it from the group. And it's one of these things that, like, accountability, it's just that mirror that sometimes we can't be for ourselves. Like, we can't fully objectively take a look at all that we've accomplished, or, how far we still have to go. And we can't necessarily always guide ourselves because we're a little too close. Like, even as a coach, you need coaches to give you some perspective. I mean, I have Ryan who will give me feedback, and a lot of times I don't want to hear it. Yeah. And I'll rebel against it at first. Like, I had one of my friends that I was like, Ryan just told me I need to do this thing, and I'm complaining to you because I know I need to do it, even though I don't want to do it. But it's one of those things that you need that feedback, and it's sometimes the pick me up that we need, and sometimes it's the little reality check that we need. But I mean, it's so key, and finding a coach can be one of those things where you're having an expert guide you.
Why do you love bodyweight workouts? Why do you love stuff you can do at home? Like, so do you always gravitate that for your own workouts, or is that just something that you personally know other people? Just tell me why bodyweight. Like, why do you like that style?
So when I started Redefining Strength, I wanted to give people no excuses not to do something, right? Even with programming and having an ideal programming, I always tell people you need a plan B, right? So if you can't get to the gym on a day and you really had, your squat and press and whatever workout laid out, have a 5-minute option that you can do at home. Yeah, it's not the same. Yes, it doesn't create that consistency where you're doing the same thing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but you're still going to move forward because you're at least doing something. I think sometimes with programming, as much as it also provides accountability, it makes people think, well, if I skip this, my week's all ruined, and so I'm not going to do anything. So I always tell people, hey, have a quick home option. And bodyweight is the perfect way to get in a workout wherever you go. And part of the reason I started doing the variations videos is because I wanted people to know that there's no one best move. I think a lot of times we think conventional deadlift, that's the best. It's the only way to do everything, and everybody has to do that. I'm like, no. Your build might not be right for it. Your injury history might not be right for it. It might not match your goals. I love deadlifting. Deadlift's my favorite. But for some clients, I use sumo. For some clients, I use single leg. For some clients, I use a slow eccentric with body weight at home. There's lots of different variations, and I want people to know that you're not limited by certain movements, certain equipment, that by using different tools, the kettlebell versus the resistance band even, you can get different results. And that there's a lot you can do in a very little space, because let's face it, if there's an excuse, we'll find it, we'll make it, and we won't do something. I'm guilty of doing it too. On a stressful day, a tired day after work, I'm like, do I really have to do anything? But I tell my clients the exact same thing I tell myself. Just do 5 minutes. If after 5 minutes you're like, no, I'm done, I really need to get back to work, at least you did 5 minutes of quality. And a lot of times when you do that 5 minutes, you end up doing 45 minutes or whatever your full workout was, because you get motivated to move. You start feeling good for moving. And let's face it, an object at rest likes to stay at rest.
Right.
An object moving, if you're rolling that rock down that hill, it'll gain momentum. So it's one of those things that even if you just do 5 minutes one day, that'll make you feel positive about what you did. So the next day going into the gym, you'll be like, yeah, all right, I can do 5 minutes again. Then maybe the next day it's 10 minutes. And then maybe you're pushing a little bit harder. So it's one of those things that you want to get the momentum rolling, and having all the variations that I provide on the channel and a lot of the bodyweight exercises, you can do just that. Plus, I think people underestimate what you can actually get out of bodyweight movements. They don't think that they can build strength. They don't think they can burn fat, but you can do all of those different things. You can slow down tempos. You can increase volume. There's just so much you can accomplish with so little. And when we start to recognize that, we feel more empowered to take charge of our fitness because we have options.
So you're saying that there's really no valid excuse?
Basically.
Okay.
We'll make them. I mean, we'll make them. Let's face it. There is a lack of time. There is a lack of, energy sometimes in the day. We have a million different things pulling at us. But I think one of the most empowering things, and also sort of the hardest thing to admit, is that really excuses are just that. They're excuses, right? And
so for anybody listening that, for our listeners right now, if anybody need some help, I mean, obviously they can find you on YouTube, on Facebook, and us as well. But we're here, to help people. And how important is it? I know you said coaching is hugely important, but how important is it to you for you to invest into others as far as like from a business side? Like who do you go to? How do you get your influence? How do you get your coaching? Because I know you said Ryan, but there are other influencers out there that you need help from. So is there anybody that you can recommend to anybody, or
so I
books,
think,
or?
I was going to say, and for me, it's honestly not even just one person, or like, I love looking at your guys' channel. I love, Funk Roberts for ideas for workouts, Brett Contreras does some great stuff. Like there's so many like educational sources out there, but I would tell people, when you want to get started, look at someone in your situation too, who maybe has even gone through what you've gone through. And if you're a trainer, and you have a client come in, they're the best source of learning, right? Because no two bodies are alike. Every client I've had come in, I like to call them my weirdos, my dysfunctional crew. But every client that comes in presents you with a new challenge, and it might be a knee injury, and it might be the same knee injury as someone else's, but the reason it occurred is potentially completely different. So the process of, getting them back into working out, working around it, is going to be different. So it's one of those things that the more we can be present and even analyze and educate ourselves by doing, the better off we're going to be. Because you can read everything until you're blue in the face. You could have the best scientific knowledge out there, but unless you put it into practice and are really conscious during your workouts of what you feel working, how things are adding up, tracking your results, you're not going to get the results that you want.
Right.
But I also think too, we get really into certain things and then we stop being open to other things. So don't ever shut down someone else presenting a different perspective. But in terms of who and what I read, it's just honestly everything I can get my hands on. Like if I even see just like, an interesting article by someone who's, in the magazine, like Women's Health or whatever, I might follow up and see what else they have out there. And it's one of those things that I even like reading those things, because as a trainer, I can see what people are looking for. Because like, I think sometimes we rest on our trainer morals, right? And we think, oh, well, you have to do this. You can't call it lower abs. You can't call it this or that. And the thing is that's what someone's looking for though. And to not use their language to help them get from point A to point B, it's kind of stupid.
Right.
So it's one of those things that if someone's looking for something specific, you want to be able to address what they're looking for. I actually had an article on dead butt syndrome, which I had never used the term before, but people were looking for that. And it did highlight a very important issue of glute underactivity. And so by speaking to them where they're at, I could help them get to where I knew they needed to be. So it's one of those things that some of the education you need to do actually needs to be looking at what people out there are searching for. What do they need answers for, and how can you help them based on your previous education, based on your degree, or based on the certification that you did. And if you're a trainer, don't stop at the certification, keep going.
No. Yeah, and a majority of the people listening to podcasts on YouTube, they don't understand what we understand, because they're not experts.
But it's our job to educate them. We're not
Exactly.
just handing out reps. We're not just handing out sets. We're educating, because again, it goes back to, if you understand why you're doing something, you're way more likely to do it. You're way more likely to appreciate it. It's like even breaking down for clients the difference between a proper movement and a recruitment pattern. Right. I harp on this all the time. I'm like, you can't just go into your workouts and just go through the motions. At the beginning, it might just be enough to, say, hey, I did it. But as you progress, you need to be aware of what muscles are working and where you really feel the move, because if you're not, you could be replicating a really nice looking movement pattern, but some of my most athletic clients are replicating that movement pattern, but compensating to do just that. So it's one of those things that the more you can educate them to be empowered themselves and take a look at what they're actually doing, so that they could even give their coaches feedback, the better off everybody's going to be.
So I know what recruitment patterns are. I know what movement patterns are, but for someone who has no clue what they are, they're going to be like, what did she just say? So just share like a minute or two on what recruitment patterns are and muscle activation and stuff like that. Stuff that's uber important in a physiological standpoint. So just quickly tell our listeners what that is.
So movement pattern is the form that we usually think about. So when you watch yourself squat, doing a squat properly. But if you're more athletic, sometimes you're watching yourself in the mirror, right? And you're like, okay, I look like I'm going to want to sort of lean to one side, so I'm not going to let myself lean. So in their attempt to make the movement look correct, their form correct, what ends up happening is they use muscles that they shouldn't be using. So if you ever, squat and you feel your lower back, it's because you're probably trying to extend your lower back and really arch your lower back to keep your chest up, because you think that's proper form. But instead of actually getting the extension from another part of your spine, you're recruiting the wrong muscles, so you're using the wrong muscles. The recruitment pattern is basically, where do you feel it? I ask my clients all the time, I'm like, where do you feel the movement? And if they can't answer right away, I'm like, you weren't thinking about where you're feeling it. Yeah. But it's one of those things, you want to think about where you're feeling it. And yeah, when you're going for that max deadlift, those have to be automatic. But when you're first starting out and you're doing some of those glute activations, so the muscle or the movements where you can feel the muscle start to work, that burn, that pump, when you're doing those, you want to be able to say, hey, I actually feel my butt cheek burning. I know this is working. I don't feel it in my lower back. I don't feel it in my knees. I feel it in my butt. So basically the recruitment pattern is, where do you feel it? And the movement pattern is does it look correct? Is the form correct? And the activation is, do you feel the muscle working, basically?
Yeah.